All right, welcome back to our Parasite episode of the Electric Image Express. I'm really excited to have our guest on today, Minji Chang.
Hi.
Minji, thanks for coming on, Minji. Minji, you are actually in the industry. You are an actress. You are a producer. You've been involved in collaboration platform for Asian American artists. And you also host your own podcast, first of all, which
Yep.
talks about a lot of really, it seems like a really cool natural conversation. And you just are so good at making yourself seem, relatable and approachable when you talk. And so always inspired when I listen to it. So I'm
Thank
excited to
you.
have you on here to talk about Parasite, and you hear about your opinions of, the industry, how it affects Asian Americans, how about the Korean, arts industry, and just general reactions about it. So, did I give a good introduction on yourself? Like, what else about
Yeah,
you
that was
you're working
great.
on?
Sean, you're doing so good. I'm honestly really honored to be here. This is I've been able, we became friends and I've been able to see the birth of this. So this is so amazing. I'm like got to hear your idea, then got to see you or hear you create it from scratch, and now here I am as a guest. This is really cool.
Well, I'm thrilled that you came on and you decided to spend some time with us today. I want to talk to you about Parasite. Um, Parasite, of course, has been a really influential movie for Asian cinema, for Asian Americans, because of the recognition it had in the Oscars and other awards in the West. But before we get into all of that, I want to give some context for our audience here. Parasite, you guys probably already know about this since it came out recently, but it was released in South Korea in May of last year, 2019. It was released in America starting October 2019. And it got a lot more of a push after it destroyed the Oscars and just cleaned up. So overall, it's done really well in the box office, right? 257 million worldwide, 70 from Korea, 50 plus from the United States. And a lot of that came after the Oscar win. Notably, first Korean movie to be ranked number one in Japan in 15 years. Uh, it's a big deal, I feel like.
Wow.
So
Very
wanted to shout
significant.
that. Yeah. It also not only destroyed the, cleaned up on the Oscars, but it dominated the critics. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 99%, Metacritic a 96, which is the highest of the year, and top 50 all time in its ranking right now. So
Wow.
big,
Dang.
big deal.
It's a good report card.
Good report card. Good
Yeah.
report card. The Mrs. Park would be very happy about that.
So happy. But it's
Uh,
not A plus, but still.
Not, yeah, 96 is like on the border of A plus. It's like you almost got there. And not only did it win the Oscars for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best International Film, it was the unanimous winner of the Palme d'Or at Cannes. So the hype is real. It was, it transcended everything, and it was this big crescendo and climax for Asians and in media before 2020,
Hmm.
the kind of calm before the complete war story of the year.
We had a shining moment before everything fell apart. Yes.
Yeah. Bong Joon-ho needs to go back to whatever devil he made that deal with and kind of negotiate terms. Because for the rest of us, like, Bong, like I know the Oscars are great, but come on, we need some of that back. But Minji, how did you feel though when you first watched it? Just want to get a little bit of a sense of your first reactions, and then now that it's been 8-ish months, you might have seen a little bit of the aftermath or impact or lack thereof. What do you think about it now?
My first reaction, I'm really very fortunate that it was an Asian film and that the universe that I live in is very Asian centric in this entertainment sphere. So it's like, a little tiny niche, but we roll, to me, it's like we're rolling deep more and more, and we're very supportive of Asian and Asian American filmmakers, creatives. So there were specific screenings that were happening that are organized. I do know that there are a lot of people out there who know about Gold House.
Yeah.
I don't think actually the one that I went to was a Gold House screening. I actually think it was, if I recall correctly, and part of me, if I brain fart, which I will, my brain has stopped functioning properly since March of 2020. So, but I think I went to a screening that was organized by a Koreatown pizza company, and they did this whole thing. I'll tell you about that later, but it was random. I was like, huh? Like, I've been invited to different screenings in LA. They happen all the time. We're very, very lucky here to be like film centric, right? And so it's like my FAO Schwartz. If this is like a toy store, this is like, yeah, screenings everywhere. And so they were doing a K-Town centric screening. I got to go to that. It was very early. I think it was definitely way before it came out to like the wider public. And it was hosted by this Korean pizza company supported by Neon. So Neon, I think, reached out.
Right.
So Neon's
Right.
the people, the
Yeah.
production company that made it. It was insane. My brain melted. It was at the ArcLight. So that's also a very beautiful, like high-end theater, if you
Yeah.
will. It was an experience. I remember feeling glued to my seat. It was a very visceral experience because I was so engaged and tense the whole time. And I laughed my butt off. Like I was so, because I was ready to be scared and I was just laughing so hard because it's hilarious. And then so when the scary stuff, I get scared very easily and I don't like thrillers. I don't like, if I can pay good money that I'm trying to make to avoid horror or like thrillers, I'll pay it. But I loved it. I loved it. So I enjoyed even all the excruciating like fear and tension.
Yeah.
My brain exploded. It melted, and we were talking about it all night. Then we went to the Korean. Then they had an after party at this Korean pizza company, and they had a peach pizza.
What?
So they made a specific
Oh,
pizza to
wow.
celebrate Parasite.
Was there hot sauce on it?
I don't remember. It was like
No.
we're all like, oh, we get it because of the theme of the movie and everything with the peaches, but we're like, is this good? Like,
Yeah.
is but we all ate it and we're all starving, so it turned out fine. But yeah, no, I remember that night very distinctly. Like I didn't know up from down, and I didn't
Yeah.
know frontwards from backwards, but I just loved it so much. And after having watched so many different movies that were to me kind of like disheartening or mediocre, or just kind of fell short, I was just so happy. I was like, this is a movie. This is. Can I curse?
Go ahead, for sure.
I
Yeah.
was like, this is a fucking movie.
Yeah.
I was like, hi. And the fact that it was made by a Korean director, and it's, you know, I was waving my little flag everywhere, you know, metaphorically. I walked
Yeah.
with extra pride.
I also had similar vibes to you. I knew nothing about it. I just heard a lot of hype about it, and I knew already by the time the hype was, because in Japan, which I was living in Tokyo at the time, um, Korean movies don't come out the same time they come out in Korea. So I had heard about it, but I couldn't watch it for a little while. It was only until I came back in America in December for the holidays when I was able to watch it. And I knew, okay, so I'm like you with horror movies. I've watched a lot of horror movies on Wikipedia by reading the plot. That's how I
Oh,
watch.
okay. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even want to do that. I was like, I don't need this put in my brain.
I love scary, like UFOs and ghosts. That's like my shit. But
Mhm.
I'm too scared to actually watch that because I hate when the director just puts you in that chair and it's like, I have you. I can do
Y-
whatever I want to your emotions. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want that. Okay. I don't want
Yeah.
that. So so big conflict in my head. But I really liked how, I'm sure this is intentional, but I was on the edge of my seat the whole time because I expected the horror like to unfold. And I was like, oh, here it comes. And it never really came because it was actually after you finish watching it and then you digest the plot, you realize it's, you know, there's other meanings to it that we'll get to later. Um,
Hmm.
and I actually, you know, I came away with it. All the feelings hit me in the front, which I think was not how I usually like my favorite movies. My favorite movies, I like them to be slow burns, and then for me to be walking, whatever on the street a few weeks later and be like, oh, that's what he meant. I get it now.
Mm.
That's, but now that 2020 has happened, I kind of feel like we needed it. We needed that directness, because all the class disparity they talk about, all the themes about late stage capitalism and how the lower income class just can't get out of their own way. We see that around the world, especially in America as well. And and I think it was actually appropriate, which I thought maybe it was a little bit too in the face. It was actually, maybe it could have been even more so, because that's how serious the subject is right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it's such a there's a universality to it, obviously, that we can relate so deeply to a. I think that was what sucker punched a lot of people, was that, you know, they expected it is a foreign film, like
Yeah.
domestically here for us, it's a foreign film, right? It's
Yeah.
an Asian director, so there's an expected, not exoticism, but just a disconnect, because it's not something we're familiar with. But
Sure.
what he
Yeah.
did so well, in my opinion, was to be so specific and true to what that experience is in Korea. And this is me as like the actor and like the storyteller. The specificity is where the universal connection lies. When you recognize something real because it's real for the people who are living it, you can empathize, you can put yourself in the story, you can
Totally.
see it, and it's not ambiguous, and it's not like, what do they mean by, I don't get it. It's like, oh, I know that. I know that shame. I know that frustration. I know that
Yeah.
like hopelessness. That's so apparent that that's what speaks to you. And that's what I think he did so well. And I genuinely think Bong Joon-ho didn't do it to serve a global audience. He was just doing his damn thing, which is why I love it so much on that level. Why I think it was such a brilliant hit. He did not try to cater to anyone. He was doing his movie. And that
Yeah.
to me, I'm
Yeah.
like on the artsy level of like, and soul, I'm very spiritual. Like that's what honesty and authenticity can do. It breaks all these walls because he wasn't trying to tell you anything. He wasn't trying to teach, but he was precise. That's the part. Oh, it was like, I was like, he took a scalpel and he like, it was so precise. It was, oh, it's so sexy. I don't know how to put it. Like, you don't think of Bong Joon-ho and go like, sexy motherfucker right there. But
Yeah.
I was like, what you
Hey,
did?
yeah, his camera work is definitely sexy for sure. His
All of
yeah.
it.
There are, I think that's also one of the rewatchabilities of this movie, though, is that if you go in there, you've already kind of understand the plot, and then you just kind of pay attention to the perspectives, the way the shots are cut up, the framing. You get a lot of enjoyment from that, and which makes it, you kind of discover little secrets every time. For
Yeah.
instance, I think just a couple off the top of my head, there was one scene where the family, I think, are they the Kims, the family in the basement,
Mm-hmm.
they're pressuring the pizza lady to like get them in jobs, and the camera just slowly pans in and like makes it more claustrophobic as the pizza lady gets surrounded by the whole family. Just a
Oh, I didn't
subtle,
even notice that.
there's like probably 100 things which I didn't notice either, but you know, the scalpel, you'll notice the scalpel marks after
Precision.
exactly. Another one that I really really like is when Kevin is taking Kai's hand for the first time and their hands connect. He is holding a red pencil, and the red pencil, I was like, oh, that's like Cupid's arrow, like bam, right between them. I assume after I shared that one video clip of to you about his perspectives and precision, I
Mhm.
assume everything he does is intentional. So
It really is. That's why I think again it's a testament to like the creative genius and like the creative obsessiveness. I mean, you could characterize that in a lot of different ways. Be like, that fool's crazy, but like crazy is what makes it beautiful.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
absolutely.
he thought of every single freaking thing. When I found out that they built the set, like that all of it was a set,
Yeah.
and they didn't use like, oh, they didn't just go on location, like find a neighbor in Korea and film there. No, they designed all of that. It was very purposeful, and I was like, yeah, my brain exploded.
I think going back to your sense of how he was true to himself,
Hmm.
and that is what makes it imminently relatable. I love that, right? Like I also hate when studios cater to huge global audiences. Like, hey, let's throw in a Chinese character now because China's a big audience. That's,
Hmm.
turns me off. But
They will care because there is an Asian person in it. It's this formulaic.
yeah, it's like it's not easy. It's not one to one, right? It's not just like a direct route like that. But when Bong tries to portray things that he cares so deeply about at such a raw level, it's like it's so good, it's so perfect that it looks easy, right? Which is like, yeah, you can. A lot of sports commentators talk about like the masters of in basketball. They make it look really easy when it's really actually really fucking hard. But another reason then we talked about this about why I think it's you can tell it's relatable is because the movie is very memeable. There has been,
Totally.
yeah, I think I can, let me see if I can share my screen with you here. So like this meme of like the class disparity has been used a lot, especially when what's called Gal Gadot was like organizing all those celebrities that are singing Imagine. Uh,
Yeah.
or like when Elon Musk was naming his child like an algebra
What
flunky.
is that? Did he ever pronounce that name? I still don't know how it actually sounds.
No,
So,
I've not heard it. I've not heard it vocally spoken.
ugh.
Elon Musk, pronounce your child's name, you coward.
Yeah, please. Or maybe not. I don't know.
But no, but I just think like meme metrics are to me like this new way to measure how much a movie can stay in your public conscious. And so here we are.
It definitely made impressions, you know what I mean? And it's continuing to make impressions in our feeds.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you said having an Asian face isn't exactly, that doesn't mean that Asian Americans are going to be excited about what's on the screen. As someone who's extremely tapped into the Asian American creative community, how do you think Parasite, which correct me if I'm wrong, seems to be helped by like a Korean government's conscious push to invest in culture, right? How do Korean Americans see that? What's that perspective like as a creator specifically?
I would love to be able, no, I don't want to be able to speak on behalf of all of Korean America as a Korean American
I mean,
individual.
you're pretty qualified, honestly.
I have opinions. This is my whole like I don't know if it's diplomacy or it's just like I'm old and I get like that people have different perspectives. You can look at one thing and have 8 trillion different views on it. So that's why, and this is something that annoys me about a lot of Korean Americans or Asian Americans is that we like to blanket statement things and like speak on behalf of all of the community. And I'm like, I don't know. And because I've been positioned and asked to do that so many times, I hesitate. So I'm going to put
Sure,
that as a
for sure.
disclaimer. I don't feel entirely comfortable speaking on behalf of Asian America. What I've observed is, and what like I'm very, Sean, you've learned this about me. Like I'm a thinker, but I'm more of a feeler. Like I pick up on vibes, right?
Yeah.
And so whether that's just it's just energy or like cues from people's shiftiness or their tension, I don't know. I pick up on that. I think Asian Americans had a massive heyday with this film. I think Korean Americans, there's a lot in this particular millennial generation, which like honestly, when you say millennials right now, you're talking about the adults. Millennials
Yeah.
aren't the youngsters anymore. That's the Zoomer
Yeah.
generation, and probably the younger than Zoomer generation. That's
Don't don't
quickly.
don't talk about that.
I know. But to make it all about us, which is like our stereotype, the millennials, we're the grown-ups, they're married. We're like the ones that are now in charge of the world. I think there's a lot that's been unpacked as we've taken on responsibility and had more identity awareness of what it means to have been a child of immigrants from this particular era. Because
Sure.
what is now and what has been will never be again, right?
Yeah.
Our kids are not going to experience the same level of racism, the same kind of ostracizing loneliness. They're going to deal with their own stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't think they're that privilege that they don't have hardship. It's just going to be different. So I think this particular generation, the Gen Xers and the millennials, have had a lot of conflict with Asian American identity. There's a lot of self-hatred because it was the reason why our lives were hard, being picked on, being for a lot of guys being super emasculated, for a lot of women being fetishized, feeling unsafe,
Yeah.
in general being othered. The cultural language gap between us and our parents have yielded a specific kind of relationship en masse. There's a lot, right? And so I think whenever we get a chance to celebrate it, it means a lot because contextually speaking, there's a lot of sadness and pain and resentment and
Sure.
anger and baggage around it. So on that front, I mean, I personally did. It felt nice to be super proud to be Korean American
Yeah.
because personally, I'm still like resolving. It genuinely helped me heal something because when I think of Korea, I think of plastic surgery, I think of alcoholism, I think of depression, I think of all the problematic stuff that my parents brought over, fully recognizing they brought over the 1980 version of Korea. But still,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
all of that, you know, it's all there. And so it's a big deal to in summary.
Yeah.
It means a lot. And I think it was a nice win. And I think it was something that we did need to feel some level of connection to motherland, and
Yeah.
it was really really beautiful to see so many non-Koreans root for it too. And Korea's done honestly an extraordinary job exporting culture. Like I'm still learning about
It's all
the
it's
nuts and bolts of that.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the celebration goes to a few things, right? Like it's relatable. It's a movie that's completely relatable, and it's while not solving the issue of Oscars being not diverse, it's a step. It's something, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, that's those are definitely huge positives, but I was thinking like we had talked offline sometimes about how Asian American representation is great, but it needs to be good, right? It needs to the talent needs to be really really good, and you can see where the bar is set. Like Asian films like Parasite, or like Crouching Tiger, way back in the day, they've set a high bar, and I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a bit of like, well, we should celebrate it, but then we have to be mindful of like how much still need to invest to get to that stage, right? Because an Asian American film, there hasn't maybe, and it's hard to really compare, but like in terms of quality, in terms of production value, in terms of just skill level, not
Mm-hmm.
many have been up that level.
Right, right. And I have a lot of thoughts and opinions. I've seen a lot of I guess different like levels. Everything from like I've watched a lot of student short films. I'm an actor, so I've even read scripts, things
Yeah.
that I never was in, but I saw were being attempted to be made. I feel very lucky to have even that inside knowledge to like the film festival circuit, which is even that there's a spectrum of like tiers. Like you have your Sundance, you have Cannes. That's where I actually first started hearing about Parasite because it destroyed Cannes. Like
Right.
everyone was talking about it. And I was like, what? A Korean film? Like, oh my God, that's amazing. So I was so impatient to watch it, which is like, I think it was like 6 months of, and I'm a very impatient person. Um, but like in the scope of things, yeah, I've seen a wide range. I would say in general, my note is I'm happy to report that it's getting better, which is awesome. I think in general, the quality and the boldness and kind of like just the execution of these films are improving. But it's been a bumpy road, like just in an objective level, right? And
Hmm. Hmm.
it's tough because I care so deeply and so many people care a lot about representation and they want to support something. But also, you're talking about the Asian American community where we are the most internally self-critical. So we are
Yeah.
going to then
Yeah.
apply that same criticism outward. And you're like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to back this. Like, this is me. It's like representing. I'm not going to promote this movie that, even though, yeah, it's about representation, like, you can't bring yourself to do it because you just think it's not good enough. So it's hard. It's like a chicken or egg thing. People need support. Filmmakers need support. They need encouragement. It feels very fragile in this space sometimes.
Right. Definitely.
Um, but then also, if we're not truthful about it and not objective about these things that we're putting our heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears into, if we're not objective on like how it measures up and what measuring sticks are we using,
Yeah.
limited ways to advance, right? Whatever that means. That's, I think, a lot of that's under the microscope too. Like, what does that mean? Like, if you're going to succeed as a film, what qualifies like a successful film? To me, I'm like, am I moved by it? Do I believe it? Do I care?
Right.
And
Right.
there's a lot of mainstream movies that are not Asian American that I could give a shit about, but still got $100 million to make it.
That's true. I mean, there are. I mean, not all movies are made to move you. Some are made to just make money, and
Exactly.
that's okay. Or sell toys or something like that. Do you think, as- maybe I'm going down the wrong hole here, but like, is Parasite going to have a lasting impact here in America, right? Korea, it probably has more of an impact, but will it open any doors for Asian Americans? Or is that just like complete, or is that, that differentiation already quite established? And so people aren't going to be like, okay, because you make something that's similar, like if you have a script now that's maybe has a similar vibes to Parasite and to Asian American, like, does that have any impact?
I personally think, I can't speak on behalf of the whole industry, but I think it
Yeah.
made its impact. I think it definitely did. I think that I know for a fact before coronavirus, everyone's like, oh shit, we need the next Parasite.
Oh, really? Already?
There are people who are that formulaic about it, and they're like, Korea just destroyed the Oscars. We need Korean content.
Yeah.
And to a degree, they might be totally right. There are the masses who suddenly realize, oh, that's the guy who made Snowpiercer. Like, you know what I mean? Like Snowpiercer probably had his whole reason. I watched it after. There's like once something, you get the whole IMDb filmography gets the resurgence, right? Because something in its weight, does really well. So people are going to be like, I know people are talking about that. They're like, oh, find the next Bong Joon-ho. That's what's going to be on the forefront. That's what the Oscars do. And as if people hate on it, I don't disagree. Like talking about the politics and how, whatever. To me, Parasite deserved it because it was merit and it was meaningful. Like it was all of it. And that's why, again, it felt like such a rare golden moment because other choices I've definitely disagreed with. I was like, that was so political and whack. But I think I think it has changed. But then it was so quickly followed up by a coronavirus, and now we're like, can we even make anything anymore?
Yeah. Well,
So who knows
I
what
mean,
that's changed.
going back to Korea, at least Korea is one of the places that's probably safer to be filming and creating right now.
Yeah. I'm curious to you, Sean. Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, you being Asian American but not Korean.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely like, again, I'm just here waving my flag, but how did it impact you? How did you feel about it? Did you
Um,
feel represented?
did I feel represented? I mean, I've always enjoyed Korean films, and I think there's like a specific style or mood that Korean films that I've watched, and I'm not an expert, but um, you know, I've watched a number of them. They have a specific mood and flavor that is really unique. Um,
Mhm.
so I watched it and like I had that kind of mindset about it. I didn't think at all about how it would impact Asian Americans at all because this is before Oscars, right? So I was just
Mhm.
like, oh, this is a good movie. Uh, but when I was doing research for this and I was seeing the reactions on Reddit and I was seeing Bong on Jimmy Kimmel Live and seeing all the reactions post Oscars, it got me excited. And
Mhm.
I would just love to see something that's being made here, by Asian Americans that can get to that level. I think there's still a ways to go, but I'm excited. I think this a lot of I would say motivation to creators. And this is another point, which is like, yeah, I looked at it from this angle, but I knew a lot of these movies they go under the radar. Before I made this podcast, that was my whole mindset. It was like, okay, well, this is a great movie, and I can't wait to like drop this movie as like a name drop in 10 cool Asian movies that you haven't seen before, but are really, really good. You know, um,
Yeah.
so that was kind of my mindset. Like, oh, well, the American public is probably not going to recognize this as much as it should recognize. But once I saw, the Oscar win, the permeation through Twitter, then I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is like pretty much hits the mainstream of the culture.
It really did. And I think it's I don't know how they felt about it, like they being Korea, because there are other moments like Psy, right, with Gangnam Style.
Of
Like
course, yeah.
that was such a confusing thing for Korea. I think it still like confuses the hell out of them. And there's part of me, I guess,
And now
the
BTS,
American,
the BTS army has like destroyed Trump in a couple different.
I know, like the Trump rally
Yeah.
and pre-BTS, it was the Gangnam Style thing that like broke YouTube. And but it also honestly it perplexed me as much as that was another cool thing. I was like, oh wow, everybody's like learning about Korean culture, and then this thing went. But for me being the consummate like critic, I was also like, why is it such a big deal? I really thought about it because
You mean Parasite, or do you mean other like
Gangnam Style,
Korean?
like other
Oh, Gangnam
Korean
Style.
things, other things, other Asian things that have made a splash, right? And this I can go so deep for so long and talk
I
about this
was
for
gonna
hours.
say there is a lot about Gangnam Style, a lot of mixed reactions that I have for that too.
Yeah, I probably share them with you because we've like just about how mainstream media, and of course we're saying mainstream media is Hollywood, it's the Western gaze and the Western, collective
Yeah,
opinion, right? The collective stamp of approval, which so, like unconsciously we're basically trying to win the approval of white America, feels
yeah,
like.
yeah.
But like, yeah, I felt partially offended with the Gangnam Style thing, and even with like K-pop because, and this is just me. This is my very, you guys, I'm unpacking my own toxic masculinity. Okay, I get it, but like how we have depicted sexiness and how we have depicted male masculinity, and then I look at the acceptable forms of like Asian pop culture
Yeah.
that there's still, I don't know, there's something about it that like knowing how white America can be, something about it rubs me the wrong way. I don't feel like
K-pop?
it's, yeah, well, like K-pop and like Gangnam Style, again, it's just like not my cup of tea anyways. The 90s K-pop I was all about, and I still like, I fangirl, turn into a 12-year-old when I think of like HOT and um but yeah, anyway, it gets really deep about like the exporting of Korean culture, how formulaic they've been, and how poorly they treat their
Right.
K-pop idols, which I fucking hate, and then how the West has received it, how they have like adopted it in certain ways and like taken it as their own like exotic little dog from Asia. I don't know how to put it.
That's an interesting way to put it, for sure. I think Gangnam Style was that gives me more uncomfortable vibes than the current K-pop
Yeah,
wave.
for sure.
I'm not an expert. I can't really. I've only observed it from like the same angle that we're talking about it right now. I've
Yeah.
never listened to BTS consciously, but Gangnam Style I definitely have memories of the otherness of how white America observed that music video. It was
Yeah.
like, look how quirky and weird
Yeah.
this Korean guy is.
Yeah.
Um, and then they would look to me kind of like, can you explain what's going on? I'm like, I mean, I probably have a little bit more context than you, but really not enough to like, this is not, I'm not an expert, and I don't know why you think I'm an expert.
I just want your opinion. I'm not an expert. I just have lots of opinions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. I mean, that's what I'm saying is like they would look to me as because you're Asian, you know, like what is exactly is going on,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was like I was like didn't make me feel good about that. The current one, I feels a little bit more, and I have to do more research about this, but I feel like there are better, more positive, and maybe those are just shortcuts to like to masculinity and how that's portrayed with like people are actually fangirling on
Yeah.
K-pop,
No, it feels more
right? So
genuine. So I'm
feels
not
yeah.
I'm not I'm not pooing on any BTS fans.
Be
I just
careful.
noticed.
Yeah.
Oh no, 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 please don't at me. No, I this is the sucky part with K-pop. I love it despite like knowing how problematic it is. You know what I mean? When I see it, I can't help but dance. So I
Yeah.
get the allure. I'm just like I'm that girl who's like, well, how do they treat them behind the scenes and how did they negotiate their contracts? I get really because I care about artists and I don't like when people get commodified and exploited. Not a fan of that. But yeah, no, the music's great. It's really fun. And I love that there's all these different kinds of people that are not Asian that are fangirling over beautiful Asian men. It's
Yeah,
great.
we'll kind of see. It seems to be more widespread than the otaku anime phase of Japan back in a couple 15 years ago, maybe. Um, but
But I mean, there's the geek culture, and this is, uh, I love that Parasite is like a different gateway, and it's through film and it's through this other medium. But like, anime and K-pop they have a really wide fan base. It
Yeah.
has been a widely accepted. However, I will say the way that we characterize fans of those are little girls and geek culture, which
Yeah.
again,
Uh-huh.
according to mainstream media, is not the desirable. It's not like you're aspiring to be geek culture. Although that's changed a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we're just in general becoming a lot more accepting, which that makes me so happy that you can have your cup of tea and you're not going to be ridiculed for it. That's what I think is general. We are progressing little by little. We
I
are
hope so.
definitely taking some giant leaps back this year
Oh my
with
God.
some like nonsensical bullshit. But in terms of like if we were in high school, like the cliques aren't so brutal to each other. They don't necessarily mingle with each other, but they can coexist and you're just like not, you know what I mean? Like brutalizing each other a little
Yes.
less.
Any Zoom Gen Z kids out there, if you disagree with us, please let us know because we're
Yeah,
both
I want to know.
talking about our cliques in high school. But tying back to Parasite, I love the second life of it, not only for its memability, but just when you think about all these different ways people call out social inequality, income
Hmm.
inequality
Hmm.
in America mostly. That's where my perspective is. They use Parasite a lot, and people instantly know, like, oh yeah, this is what it's about. The poor is gonna be fighting the poor in a
Hmm.
cement basement, no matter if they're in the rich person's house or they're back in their own, kind of ghetto area, right?
Right. Well,
Um,
there's a lot of commentary that I'm really grateful for the discussions it's opened up because people have been able to. That's what I think good art does. It opens your mind to appreciate more things, but also question more things and see things that you didn't see before. And because you have a reference point, right? You're saying
yeah,
like, oh yeah, I know what it was like to watch him smell his shirt. Like that was a we're watching a movie and you can't smell nothing. We don't have smellogram yet. And like, I knew
you
that
can smell, yeah,
feeling. You
yeah,
could, you know what I mean? And I was like, damn, that was beautiful. And to recognize that a lot of people have been talking about the difference, kind of the bigger hostility and the bigger, like more problematic nature of class disparity more than like race, like that
right.
people can relate more to people that are just in their socioeconomic bracket, and especially like with capitalism with America, and that's where we are very similar to Korea. That's it breaks my heart a lot of like how intense and insane it can be in Korea of just like the capitalism.
I mean, let's get into. We can get into this. This is another whole another hour podcast. I know it's already late, but like, just briefly, there are elements of. Well, first of all, capitalism is in just brief, my brief perspective. It is an American export that has been very beneficial for America in a lot of ways. For the American empire. Um, America has exported like neoliberal free market ideas, and that has impacted a lot of countries like Korea. And this is kind of the reaction to that, where the dream that is sold at the end of the movie by what's the son's name again?
Well, they named him out of nowhere Kevin, but
Kevin.
it is Kitek, right?
Is it okay? Well, Kevin. We'll just call him Kevin. So
Yeah.
Kevin's dream when he gets hit over the after he gets hit over the head by the metaphoric rock. Um,
Spoiler alert.
what?
It's fine.
What?
Everyone's watching. It's like, oh,
Oh,
spoiler.
no,
No, but
a
it's fine.
very spoiler-rich
Everyone's watching.
podcast. Yeah,
If you're listening
if
to
you're
this, you've
listening to
watched
this, you
it
watched it.
8 times.
Yeah, that dream is as in the movie and the credits, which I believe Bong wrote the song for it, and it's supposed to be about how it takes 500 years to buy that house. Like it's
Oh,
bullshit for most
wow.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and this when I was watching the movie, I noticed this a little bit. I wanted to ask you. So I did some research, right? Like, why did they use so much English? And if anyone's ever traveled to Korea or just parts of East Asia in general, you do see English being used in some forms. It's not exactly too unique or special, but I felt like they used it in specific ways, especially the Park family, the rich family, to like a flourish, like oh yeah, I know a little bit
Hmm.
English, like look at
Hmm.
me. And I mean the ties to that, to how the American consciousness of capitalism has already been infested or existing as a parasite in their minds is another reason to rewatch the movie.
Absolutely. I'm learning so much about my own history and where I come from. Like, for example, I didn't know that my dad's side of the family is from North Korea. I didn't know that till I was almost 30. Like,
Wow.
I didn't know that my grandma escaped North Korea when she was 14 and she almost died twice. I didn't know any of these things till I was like 29. So, in
Did
terms
you
of
have to like
like,
dive into it, or how did you hear about it?
she was totally open once I just brought it up. I was like, oh yeah, like I don't remember what the question. It was like at Christmas time. And she's like, "Oh yeah, when we were like coming when I came down from the north." And I was like, "Huh?" It was just so casual.
Yeah.
And it just dawned upon me like I had never asked.
Yeah.
And then I was also a little like, "Why the hell do I have to ask? You should be telling me this." Like, who knows? So whatever whose fault it is, I don't think it's anyone's fault, but it is what it is. I didn't ask and they never volunteered that information in almost 3 decades of me living. They're like, hey, so let me tell you about where we come from and what happened. I was like, huh? So I learned all these things and I'm learning a lot more because of these astounding like realizations I'm having. I am asking more specific questions to my parents because it's making me recognize how much of our life has been about assimilating and about being established and surviving and thriving in America.
Yeah.
And I don't even like blame my parents for that. It's just an observation. But it is like this vacancy, this absence of knowing my own the other part of my history, my ancestral history. I don't know the ins and outs. I know much more about World War II than I do about the Korean War.
Yeah.
Period. And my parents were born in the wake of that. My uncle was born in the middle of it. My grandparents were living through it. My
Yeah.
grandfather served in it. They saw terrible things. They lived through terrible things, and I never asked about it. And to be honest, like I didn't care that much. So it's really crazy for me to understand how the U.S. how their presence started in Korea, what influence it had. I'm still learning that right now, and as a grown woman, I'm not gonna cry over spilled milk, but it makes me a little sad that I didn't care and that I didn't know. But it's baffling to me to learn all these things. For example, one of the things that personally really impacted me was like how a white doctor, there are all these missionaries that went over to Korea, and one of these like doctors went over to perform eyelid surgery in Korea to help make
Okay.
them look less suspicious.
Oh,
So if you
wow.
want to know where the birth of like Korea being the number one plastic surgery and like I want to make
Damn.
so many movies and write so many things because I was saving up
Yeah.
so much money of my own money to get surgery on myself because I was told since I was a young girl that I would be so much prettier if I got XYZ fixed.
That is mind blowing.
That's just a part of our culture. And we don't talk about it that much, but everyone knows. Everyone knows. If you go to any of the shopping districts, you see advertisements, you see the skincare. Again, there's like good stuff that comes out of it because everyone loves Korean skincare.
Right.
BB cream, why that became a thing. I could go on about the beauty industry because I'm obsessed with it. But the BB cream was made because it was made for plastic surgery patients. It was made with all these nutrients and whatever's to heal all their scars. That's why that's like where BB came from. So like because everyone's getting surgery. Because like
Yeah.
at one point someone from the West came over and told them, y'all look really suspicious with your narrow slanted eyes and we need to fix that. So he did the cutting of the eyelid so that your eyes are round and like bright and like less suspicious.
Uh, dropping knowledge though. I mean, it's great that you learned this and now you can share it with us. I never knew that. But
I'm still unpacking it emotionally. I'm
I
like,
think
what?
it's a whole lifetime journey, right? Like,
Hmm.
and I think this is maybe a connection that I made. It might be a stretch, but that's like one shared experience that most Asian Americans can relate to is like all of our cultures, there was some type of American colonialism that impacted it. And whether it was through like escaping as refugees in the 70s or before that in the 50s with the Korea, or even before that with, Chinese Exclusion Act, there was a time when America had wanted to gain influence or sway
Hmm.
influence in that region of the world, which
Hmm.
impacted how we got here. So
Right. Right. And that's where it's like, I guess the philosophical part of me, the spiritual part of me is at odds with like the critical. intellectual part of me. Because yeah, I can sit there and break it down and be like, that's so fucked up and that's so, you know, like how who are you to like meddle in other people's things and make something that's like you're just stirring shit up for your own political and
Yeah.
financial gain. You're playing puppeteer. You're being you're masquerading this whole like thing of democracy and wanting to free people. But come on, like when I learn more about it, and that's why I think maybe there's a fear. At least I get very emotional about things. Like maybe that's why I don't want to dig. I don't want to open that wound. Maybe I don't
Mm.
want to. I don't. I keep it at arm's length because if I if I pull back the curtain too much or at all, this patriotism that I felt my whole life towards like being a proud American, which that again, that's a whole other thing.
Oh,
But
yeah.
being raised to be proud to be American and to believe certain things about this world that we live in, it would go to shit. And where would I be in that, right? So there's a lot back there, but we're seeing a lot more of like the impact of these like geopolitical whatever occurrences. I won't even call them like atrocities or what I don't
But
want qualification, but things happened, right? And
yeah.
now here we are.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one way I put it into perspective is like every country that is powerful will try to do that, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
Korea is trying to export culture, and that in some sense is a similar like end goal, right? Is like gain influence in the global sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And China, so many different ways China is trying to influence the world, mostly with money. Mulan is coming out tomorrow, so that's another way it's trying to influence the world. But
Yeah.
it's not like anything based on one culture. It's just anyone who has power and influence was going to try to increase their influence around the world if they can.
Right.
That's how I view it. So like, it's almost, I feel the most American thing is to be able to question it,
Yeah.
to be able to call it out. And talking about the Parasite, that's kind of a very American, it's very American to be able to be like, hey, look at this class disparity. Look how much we're like consistently fucked up. Even if it is not an American movie, those very identifiable values to American.
Exactly. Yeah. There's something very like it hits a very personal nerve that you don't have to be like as a very American person. You see it, you get it, and you relate. And I think what I'd like to comment on what you're saying about like the American words. I mean, that's just been so deeply ingrained in the culture since forever. As far as like I've been going there since I was a little kid. They Americanize so many things. And that breaks my heart because I went to Korea to learn Korea. And then when I get there, I see how American they're trying to be
Yeah.
with their Starbucks and with their McDonald's and with like everything, right? And like so many of the dishes and everything, like even the food, they'll just say chicken, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, chicken is tak in Korean, right? But
Yeah.
they don't say tak, they say chicken
Yeah.
because it's like a trendy thing.
Yeah.
And so now it's trending over here is like, oh, I want bubble tea or I want boba. Like that's what white people want now because it's like the trend over here. So there's a lot of cross pollinating. I guess like in terms of fairness, I'm glad that Asian stuff is becoming cooler here. There's part of me that's like
Yeah.
still,
It's better than
yeah,
nothing.
I know. But it's also like this sad thing. Like you just feel like you're in high school. Like, will you like me? Like, tell me I'm cool.
Interesting. That's your perspective. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
High school never ends, Sean. Like that's what I've noticed as becoming a grown person, working in different industries, working in different companies, working with different people. Everyone's just like, somebody like me.
It's, that's
Vote for me for homecoming.
that's the optimism that I brought you on here for. No, I'm just kidding.
God.
It's a good life lesson. How let's tie this up a little bit. It's getting a little late. I just
Hmm.
wanted to end it with a more lighthearted tone. We talked about some really serious subjects in the last few minutes. Did you have any unanswerable questions about the movie? This is something that I always, as a film nerd, I always like think about. I just want to give a couple of things.
Yeah.
One thing is that how much did Kevin get paid? Because we saw some bills, we saw her flip through it, and I counted. Okay, I counted. I think I saw 12 notes that Mrs. Park was flipping through in the first session. I think each note is 50,000 won. Google conversion says that each one is about $42, so $480 for his first session. Is that right? That feels a little.
Wait,
Tutoring is that's like, even if they're like a really rich family, it's a lot.
tutoring, if you're tutoring English to a rich family, like that's what a lot of me and my brother did it. We'd all go back. You go to Korea to like go tutor
Yeah.
Korean kids, and you get paid hella money. That's
480
like,
per session though. That's
I didn't she say? I swear she said this.
a
I
little bit.
paid the month.
Oh, that might be it. Okay.
She
That
said,
makes a lot more
I
sense.
remember because I was like, I was trying to count it too. I gave up. You're way more committed.
I'm more OCD than you are. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, I get forget it. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Like that's all I
Yeah.
said. But I remember going like, oh, I pay you for the month, and I was like, oh, that's sweet. I remember thinking, I was like, that's awesome. You get a whole month's pay.
That's probably like a good amount of the rent too. Just
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
so that was I was just curious about that. Another thing I was curious about is art therapy an actual thing? So I looked it up. There was actually an
Oh,
article at the Art Therapists Association about this movie, and they said that while art therapy has been shown to be an effective treatment for people with psychosis, Ki Jong's assertion there is a region on the page that indicates schizophrenia is definitely contrived. There's no assessments about which part of the painting does what to a person's mind,
uh-huh.
and a drawing is by no means a concrete roadmap into a person's inner thoughts. So I just wanted to let the audience know, like art therapy is an actual profession, which I did not know about, but that whole schizophrenia thing that's not true. FY.
Good to
Uh,
know. Honestly, and I assumed that I just because I mean I live in California. I'm a California girl. I was like, art therapy is definitely a real thing. But everything she was saying, I was like, she's a really good liar. So everything she was saying, I was basically like, it's all bullshit. That was my assumption.
that's like another broader thing is like they're really good bullshitters in the beginning, at least. They're really good at making up cool stories, and honestly, like that's kind of how you do in real life. You fake it till you make it, and
Hmm.
they're ready to pounce on their first opportunity. It's just the second act when they feel like they're sitting pretty. That's when they kind of let their guard down, and that's when things go to shit.
This is what I was actually thinking about Koreans. With like the more I watch like the films and understand and absorb the art,
Yeah,
that I do think there's a reason why, for better or worse, how they went from like abject poverty and starvation and being a war-torn third world country to being one of the superpowers of the globe in that short amount of time. There's something really, I mean, I'm very proud, but also like, what happened? So then when I look at all the depression, anxiety, and like suicide and the
right.
surgery and all that, I was like, it's not a easy, clean, like, yeah, there's a lot of crafty tenacity and like you see it in the dad when he's like folding those boxes at the beginning,
Yeah,
even when he's getting fumigated. I was
yeah.
like, that to me says so much about Korea. It's like, go ahead, fumigate me. I'm still gonna be here. I'm still folding boxes, man.
Well said. That's totally true. Totally true.
Yeah,
It's like I don't care if it kills me. I'll work. No, I can sleep when I'm dead. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I was like, that's how they got there. So some people could admire it for a lot of things, and some people could be like, that's really frightening, or that's really sad, or but that's the beauty of like that's the honest truth.
I
Take
mean,
what you will.
it might be go back to the whole thinking for the next generation, right? Like he's maybe doing it. I don't know about specifically that character, but a lot of Asians they sacrifice for the next. So like I might be dead, but my family will have something better.
Hmm.
And maybe he was just like the father knew that his dreams were already shattered. Like he had already given up basically, but his son had still had dreams.
You know what? I want to my own father because I think this is he gave me a smackdown emotionally a couple of years ago because I was trying to level with I was basically like pandering to my own father and we were like he was upset with somebody in my family. I was trying to make him feel better as a person and I said this very like trite, very Asian American thing to him. I was like, Appa, like, I'm so grateful that you came to America, that you sacrificed so much for us, that you like did, this and this and that. I was like stroking his ego and like praising him, saying how much I admire his commitment to our family.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he's like, "You're so full of shit." And I was like, what? I was like, completely, what? How dare you? I just like told you you're the best dad ever, even though you're being such a dick. Like, I said all these nice things. How dare you tell me I'm full of shit? And I was like, why? Why am I full of shit? I got really mad, defensive. And he's like, I didn't come here for you. And I was like, excuse
Whoa.
me? And he was like, I did not come here for you. I came here for me. He was like, I was 23 years old. There was nothing for me in Korea. America is where you went to go make it, like make something of yourself. I came here to make something of myself. And I loved his honesty,
Yeah,
even though it
that's
like
cool
hurt
that
my
he kind of
feelings.
like he was like maybe respected you enough or just knew you're adult enough to handle the truth, right?
He never, well, he said adult stuff to me since I was like 8. He's like, he told me when I was a kid, he's like, I'm going to die eventually. I'm not going to be here to take care of you. I'm like, why are you saying this to me?
Here's some trauma on a plate. Just
Yeah, no, this explains a lot of why I am the way I am. But like, he's like the brutal truth, and my mom's the one hugging me on the side.
mm,
But no, and he said that. And so, it really, I think about it still, like what the conversation that we had, and it really, that was a moment where my dad turned into a regular man. I'll say that. Like,
yeah.
I always like knew, oh, my dad's a person, but when he said that to me, it registered emotionally. Like, he's just a dude. He's me. Like, all these selfish things that I want to do so that I can feed my ego, so that I can achieve certain things, so that I can leave a legacy, or all these like dreams and hopes that I have, it registered finally about my dad. So I'll say this too, because I know that there's so much reverence that we have being, these Confucian children, like honor your parents and everything. But also, yeah, yes, to all of that. And also, they're also people. So if we're looking at them projecting like this image of ultimate sacrifice, to a degree, yes, they don't have to like go through all this trouble, but also remember they're also doing it for themselves. And I can imagine, I'm not a parent yet, so I can't speak on that. If I live to be 80, I don't know if I'll get through coronavirus, but if I live to be 80, 90, 100, I'm still going to have stuff I want to do. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I don't think I'm going to lose that part of me. So as much as there's going to be this like, oh, I want to do all this for my children, and I do imagine I'll feel that way, I still think there's going to be a huge part of it that is just and only for me. So I just want to humanize our parents too.
Good
Because
shout.
let's
Good shout.
also not give them all the credit, because they're selfish too. And I want that for them. I want my mom to do stuff to make her happy and not it just be about me. It's too much pressure.
I tell my mom all the time, like, just like do something that you want to do. I really want
Yeah.
to see that,
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I want to like help you. I'm like, no, 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 no. Help yourself. That's not helping me. It's easier with my dad. My dad's like, I'm gonna go play golf, or like, I'm gonna go do this. I'm like, all right, cool.
Your
Just
dad's a G. I love these photos that you have. Like his personality just like shines through the photo. He's like,
he,
I'm doing me. I'm living my best
yeah,
life.
yeah, and that's I think once we kind of like he just addressed me as like another guy, and that's helped our relationship a lot, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, gotta always shout out the parents. That's wouldn't be an Asian American podcast without.
It would not be. But I think
Without
we're now that we're grown, Sean, I think we're able to have these like conversations and have awakenings to like ourselves and like our relationship with our parents and who our parents even are. I really appreciate that Parasite made me think a lot more of my parents too, because I did think of like what degree and what lengths they would go to protect me and like fight for me and
yeah,
I for them.
yeah.
So even in this like totally fucked up story and in this like twisted scenario, there's a lot of love, right? And I was like, man, this is so messed up, but I get it.
Yeah, I think what Bong also does a great job of it. He makes no one there's no clear hero and villain, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of sneaky and things that the poor family has to do to survive, and then obviously like the rich parks, like they have a lot of faults as well, but they're not exactly
Yeah.
evil people. They're just kind of themselves, So.
Right.
Um, so that was definitely part of it. And back to the parents, like once you realize your parents are just individuals and they have their own faults, they're not perfect as well. It's another step in the Asian American self-realization ladder. Um,
Yes.
any other last comments on the movie before we wrap this up? Anything else that comes to your mind?
I don't know. It's just different. I was so uncomfortable in that whole movie.
Which is great, right? Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
I really appreciate movies that make me feel something. I think personally that's like why we go to the movies. We want to feel something like excitement or romance or like fear or whatever it is. I think those are really powerful things. So I really admire what director Bong did for putting science and art in this like fabulous way. That's what I want to be. Like that's what I aspire to be. Because you can make people feel things, and he did it. He took us on a journey. Like
Yeah.
I hate that word too. It's like let's go on a journey together. But we did. We went on a roller coaster ride, and he knew where he was taking us, and that's some next level genius. And I think we're all going to be thinking about it continuously and learning either in like a philosophical way and spiritual way to like a tactical way in terms of like film execution and storytelling. Across the board, I think that's what like good movies can do. And I think it'll be a lot of leveling up for a lot of people, not just Asian Americans.
Totally. I love that summary. I just wanted to give a couple other points. One, another random one is that Mr. Park's company's name is Another Brick, which I thought was really funny because a brick is like when your phone dies, it's a brick and it's it's useless, and it's a VR kind of gaming company. I thought that was a funny little touch. And then secondly, I totally forgot my second point, but
It's all good.
but what I want to say in conclusion about Parasite is it's a movie for 2020, right? It's a movie that was trying to warn us, hey, these problems that in whether it's in Korea or in America that you've pushed to the side, society has pushed to the side, are going to bear dangerous, bloody fruit one day or another. And this year is when that happened. And also, it sets the bar really high. It sets the bar really high because it makes it look easy. When you break it down into its little itty bits, you realize a lot of skill and dedication went into it. So
Absolutely. We
that
salute you, Director Bong.
we salute you.
Oh,
And
also, can I say one
yeah,
more thing about
go for
Asian
it.
America? Because I don't want to, I've been very like skirting around it. But I think with the Asian Americans, what I really want to say is I'm excited to see how much movies, including Parasite, especially Parasite, but like movies like that and other movies. I think 2019, there were a lot of good films, including like Jojo Rabbit. I remember I really liked, what was the war film?
1917.
1912? 17?
I
I
think
was
so.
like, what's
Yeah.
the number? I don't know.
The
Um,
one film. Yeah.
there was a lot of good films in a short amount of time, and that's why I was like very impressed. And it was a stacked Oscars thing. I felt like there were a lot of worthy contenders, and I think what good films could do, and the fact that Parasite, emerged victorious in that, it emboldened a lot of Asian Americans, and it gave something to like really like set a trajectory. That's what I'm really excited about, because there is a lot of value when you see somebody similar to you or like that you relate to that represents you
Yeah.
do something so excellent. It gives you a lot of like fuel, whether it's like encouragement or just determination or like vision or whatever. I'm really excited for like Asian films coming out. It's gonna do a lot.
And I'm sure we're gonna see your name on a lot of them in the near future. Let me tell you
We'll
that.
see
Watch
if
out
they'll
for
have
Minji
me.
Chang.
Oh God, we'll see. That's such a like I can't be put in this in the same conversation. I'm like, no, no, no. Don't look for my name. Like,
Setting high expectations. It wouldn't be an Asian American podcast without it.
yeah.
Well, hope everyone enjoyed our conversation today. Hope you learned something about the movie, about Minji, about myself, or just about Asian history. If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you listen to podcasts. Email us at electricimagexpress@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram or Twitter at Electric Image Express. Thank you guys and see you next time.
Bye.